there are people on this app preaching and teaching to y'all, and y'all just eating it up like it's some good food. And I bet you half of them, probably even more than half, but I'm being generous, and half don't even know how many books in the Bible it is. And I feel like that is a serious problem. And I feel like this is what is allowing for a lot of deception in the body of Christ, because we keep telling y'all, open up the Bible for yourself, read the Bible for yourself. But to your credit, we don't teach you how to read the Bible. We don't teach you what the Bible is about. You don't even know what you're reading. You probably open in KJV and it said, thou shalt did the that. And you like, huh? What, why? You know what I mean? And it's not clicking. And so for this reason, this is why I am doing 100-part series. It's probably going to even be even more than that, because to really get into the nitty-gritty of this and to break down the Bible in pieces where you ain't got to go to seminary school, you ain't got to do the most, you ain't got to open up your encyclopedias, but you can really just at a high level understand the inner workings of the Bible and what the Bible is about. This is what we got to go to. So instead of teaching y'all, oh, you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that, I'm just going to talk about the Bible for the next 100-part series. All right. So if you with me, come on, we diving right in. Today, we're just going to break down what makes up those 66 books of the Bible that I just talked about. It wasn't just written all at the same time. Yes, that it was written over a period of over 1,500 years. Yes, this book, and that's why there's so much weight in the Bible, because there have been all these books that have been written that corroborate each other, that where prophecies are being fulfilled over a 1,500-year period by different people, different cultures. Like it's insane, right? So that is what makes the Bible so credible, right? But to just get back into the nitty gritty of it, because I know it's gonna be some people on here. It's gonna be some people that's like, no. What about the books that's left out? What about the books that's left out? One of the parts. If you really wanna know, follow along, and I'm gonna break it down to you, okay? But for right now, let's start with this: Old Testament, New Testament. So in my understanding, right, and I want to preface with that, right, because I don't want to come here like I'm a guru, like I'm a preacher, like I got my seminary degree. I'm not coming on here like that. But I'm coming from a standpoint of somebody who is just a regular person, just like you, trying to understand what the Bible is about, right? So the Old Testament is about the old covenant that God had with his people before Christ, right? And the New Testament is about the new covenant that was formed because of Christ's sacrifice for us. For a lot of new believers, I tend to recommend you start with the New Testament so you can understand the gospel, right? To get to just to know what Jesus did, know why we follow him, know what the whole book is about. But you don't really get the meat of it. You don't get the understanding of it until you crack that Old Testament up. And y'all, I've been going through the books of the Bible this year, and that Old Testament has been eating me up. Do you hear me? I'm like, every day, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Like, I don't understand. I don't deserve. You know, it's please do not neglect the Old Testament, y'all. I know it's a little rough sometimes, but do not neglect it, okay? But getting into it. First, we're gonna start off with breaking down the Old Testament. Matter of fact, because this video is getting so long, I'm not even gonna be able to get into the nitty gritty of the New Testament books and the 27 books that make up the New Testament. Right now, I'm just gonna try to just do a brief overview of the 39 books, right, that make up the Old Testament. And then we'll dive into the New Testament in the next video, right? But for the Old Testament, it's made up of 39 books. Now, it's made up of different parts. And understanding these parts will just make the Bible click for you. Like, when I first heard this, I was like, like, why ain't nobody tell me? You know what I mean? So first, the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, okay? 5, right? Those books are what is called the Torah or the Pentateuch, whatever you want to have it at, that's pronounced, okay? But it's called the Torah. And the reason why Torah means, what does it mean again? I think it means just the law. Y'all go ahead and fact check that for me. I think Torah means the law. But basically it's just like the foundation of everything that makes up all the Abrahamic faiths, right? All the Abrahamic faiths include the Torah into their books, because this is the foundation of the Adam and Eve being born, the fall, the sin of man, all this stuff. Then God, decides to make a covenant with Abraham, said, your seed is going to be blessed. You're going to have more seed than the stars in the sky. Okay. Do you hear me? And then he said, all your descendants going to be blessed. And then you can end up with, after a few people, after Isaac, then you end up with Jacob. Jacob wrestled with the angel. Then he got renamed Israel, the one who wrestles with God. Oh my goodness, sorry. We going stay on track. And so because his name got renamed to Israel, all of his children, his 12 children, matter of fact, it gets a little more nitty gritty than that, okay? It gets into Joseph's children. But before we go there, okay, we're going to get into that. I promise, later on in the parts, okay? But essentially, the 12 tribes are birthed out of Israel, out of Jacob, right? His new name is Israel, okay? So the 12 tribes are birthed out of Israel. And then that's what ushers in the Exodus story of leaving Egypt. The Prince of Egypt. We all saw that movie when we was a kid. Yeah, that's what ushered in that, right? Because of Joseph. But we're going to get into that, promise, okay? I'm trying to avoid the temptation to speak ahead, because that thing is good, but that thing is good. But anyway, so then they exit out of Israel. That's Exodus. And then once we get into Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, that's when we're getting into them in the wilderness. And then God is giving them the law for the first time. He's giving them he gave them the 10 Commandments in Exodus, right? But now he's like breaking it down, like, listen, y'all need to not be mixing y'all cotton with the polyester. He getting into the nitty gritty of the Levitical laws, okay? And then we get into Numbers, and then we get into Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is when they are crossing over. There is a lot of overlap between Leviticus and Numbers, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It seems very repetitive when you get into it, but it is good. Trust me, it's good, okay? All right, but Deuteronomy is when they are crossing over into the promised land, and baby, it gets a little dicey, all right, when we go from Joshua all the way to Esther. Now, Joshua to Esther, those are the historical books, because they are literally chronicling all the things that happened after they started coming into the land, the Canaan land, right? The land that is causing all of the hoopla, right? On these enters of net, on these MSNBCs of net, all the nets, okay? Israel, okay? So to this day, that is really giving you the foundation of when these wars started, why they was beefing, who the Philistines are, like all of that. Israel couldn't get it right. They kept worshiping a pagan god. It gets into all of that. Why they got exiled for the land, why they came back, had to rebuild a wall, then they get exiled again. Lord, but we gonna get into it, I promise. And so then that's when we get into the poetic books. I think that's what it's called. Oh, the poetry and wisdom books, right? And so that is the books of Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, whatever you want to call it. Oh, and Ecclesiastes there. Almost forgot. Ecclesiastes will get you right together. Ecclesiastes had you thinking like, well, what is life? Well, whole time, if you depressed, don't read Ecclesiastes. But we'll get into that. I promise, okay? And so those are the poetic books and the wisdom books, because they're basically about just like basic human life, like how you should just navigate this life thing and what is the character of God. Like it really get into the nitty gritty of that. And so then we end the Old Testament with the book of the prophets. So that is everything after Daniel, is it? Everything after Isaiah on forward, okay, is made up of the prophets. So you have the major and the minor prophets, okay? Now, that doesn't go to the significance of how significant that prophet is, whether it's a major or minor. It just literally dictates how big those books are. So Isaiah, Jeremiah, like those books are gonna be more meatier than maybe your Malachi and your Hosea, right? Those get you like 4 chapters max, right? But when we get into the Daniels, the Isaiahs, all of them, the Jeremiah, those are meaty. Those are long, and so that's why they're called the major and the minor prophets. So because this video is so long, we gotta cut it right here, and we're gonna pick up in part 2 talking about the New Testament. All right, so make sure you follow along because we're gonna learn Bible this year. We are running out of time. We don't have time to keep playing, okay? And so this is why I'm getting serious and coming to y'all, and we're just gonna learn Bible, okay? All right, see y'all on the next one.